Now, I think it's safe to say in the last 10 years, the idea of watches has changed dramatically. And with the less of a reliance on a watch, you typically, if you are looking in the direction of getting one, want something that can take on pretty much every scenario, both a dress as well as maybe more casual situations and having spec to match that. And a term that I throw around sometimes is like an everyday style watch. It's not a universal term that everybody's going to know, but just a watch that can take on the everyday conditions of robust wear. And today we're going to be looking at two great options in the range of under $1,000 or $1,000 and under, with the new Sharp Edge series from Seiko with their SPB167 and a familiar face on the channel with the Tissot Gentleman Powermatic 80, probably one of the best everyday watches that you can find for the money. So Japan, Switzerland, two of their best offerings that you can find for the price range. Let's take a closer look. So as of late, I've been doing a lot of these comparison style videos. I think for one, they're definitely fun to do, but in addition to that, it seems like they're helpful when comparing two similar style watches in price ranges that are, again, similar. And in this instance, we're certainly looking at a familiar face with the Tissot Gentleman Powermatic 80, pretty much do-it-all style watch for around $700 or so. And then on the flip side, a newer watch from Seiko with their SPB167, which I think in a lot of ways, apart from maybe the blue dial, wearable cases, could be a nice consideration for somebody that's looking for a do-it-all style watch. Now, as I've done in the past with some of these comparison style videos, really what I want to do here is go through things to consider, look at all the different specifications, the wearability, the finishing, the movements, and then at the end kind of provide a little bit more of an overview, maybe some things to consider and what maybe direction you should be going for. But again, it all really does come down to you, but hopefully this is going to be helpful. But now let's jump in and take a closer look at both of these watches from a high level. So first, looking at the Tissot Gentleman Powermatic 80, we have a price of $775, case size of 40 millimeters, thickness of 11.5 millimeters, lug width of 21 millimeters, lug to lug of 48 millimeters, water resistance of 100 meters, movement is an automatic Powermatic 80.811, and crystal is sapphire. In regards to the Seiko SPB167, we have a price of $1,000, case size of 39.3 millimeters, case thickness of 11.1 millimeters, lug width of 20 millimeters, lug to lug of 47.2 millimeters, water resistance of 100 meters, and movement is an automatic Seiko 6R35 with a sapphire crystal, and both of these do feature AR coating as well. Now, I am not an authorized dealer for Seiko, so if you are in the market for this watch, I will link to it down below. But in regards to Tissot, full authorized dealer, so link in the description if you are in the market for this piece after this video, you like what you're seeing. I use promo code GENTLEMAN at checkout, and you get a free strap with your purchase up to $100. This is just gonna be for probably a limited time, but put the watch, put the strap in your cart, and you'll be good to go. Now, in terms of wear here, I think that's a good place to start. It is going to generally be true that they're gonna wear really similar. Now here we have an appeal to a safe 39.3 millimeters and a 40 millimeter case that should be appropriate for a variety of wrists out there. Just to mark some of the differences in wear, the Tissot is going to wear slightly larger from the top to the bottom, given the slight jump in the lug to lug distance, as well as the extending solid polished end link, which is going to add a bit more presence to the top and bottom of the case. Now the Seiko benefits from a bit more of an angled profile, which is nothing new for the Presage collection, but will assist in the watch's wearing a bit more compact on the wrist, while making the Seiko form to the wrist better in the area of thickness. Casting across the diameter, both of them feel very close, with both featuring polished bezel, adding an element of flash to their designs. The Tissot, similar to some of the other points of wear, is more prominent with the thick polished bezel that extends out side to side more than that of the slope styling of the Seiko SPB167. Looking closer at the bracelets, we have more of the same, with the thicker 3-link style of the Gentleman offering a bit of a bulkier experience, where the Seiko has slightly thinner links and an end link that will shoot directly down in order to wrap around the wrist a bit more tightly. To put it candidly, neither of these watches have bracelets that are going to wow you. Both feature button release clasp, with the Tissot following the butterfly variety and the Seiko coming in a traditional fold over style. Both are pin adjusted, so no screwed in links here, and micro adjustment is certainly an area where both of them could improve, with the Seiko offering a couple points and none with the Tissot. Both of the bracelets are going to be nice to have, and in the case of the Tissot where you do have a strap option available, I still do think it's worth going for the bracelet version, as the difference between the strap version and the bracelet version is going to be pretty insignificant in terms of price. In terms of the overall finish in the case and the bracelet, both are going to be appealing to different aspects. With the Tissot with its hairline bevel and high polish leaning into the aesthetics, while the Seiko turns into surface treatment with what is referred to as their super hard coating that will help in resisting scratches, especially in contrast with the Tissot with its more noteworthy polished surfaces. One key point of differentiation here is the lug width on these pieces. So the Seiko SPB167 comes with a standard 20mm lug width, but no drilled lugs, unfortunately, whereas the Tissot Gentleman is equipped with 21mm lugs, which is a bit more difficult in finding third-party options for straps. As mentioned, both of these watches feature a highly polished bezel, which taps into the Explorer or Oyster Perpetual feel, and a signed non-screw down crown. Though both of these watches are still rated to be capable of 100 meters of water resistance, aiding in the argument that these are both great pieces for everyday use. And in terms of durability, both of these watches feature sapphire crystals with anti-reflective coatings on the underside. I will note for the Tissot that some of the different dial options that you go for, with this blue version maybe not being the worst of the bunch, but say the black version, the AR coating I find is maybe not as strong, and depending on the angle, it could have some nasty glares on it. Now, while both of these watches feature attractive dial finishes, the one thing that is certainly going to jump out first is going to be the eye-catching texture of the Seiko SPB167. Like a lot of the Presage models from Seiko, this dial was inspired by traditional Japanese craftsmanship, with this sort of hexagonal pattern coming from Japanese Asinawa, a hemp leaf inspired pattern that is popular in Japanese culture. Added to this impressive dial finish are applied faceted indices with just a bit of lume at the outermost point, and an angular sword style handset also containing their Lume Bright, and this style really catches the light and is simply beautiful and changing under different lighting conditions. Along the outside is the inclusion of a matching blue chapter ring that is thankfully aligned, which is the least that you can ask for a watch of this price range, and a date window that is framed at the 3 o'clock and an applied Seiko signature at the 12. Then when looking at this Tissot, which is again a very well executed dial and significantly less in terms of money, well, at least $225 cheaper. In this instance, we have a deep blue dial color with an almost sunburst finish that plays with the light paired with its applied markers and large lume plots that are much more prominent than that of the Seiko. And while the Seiko leads more with its textured dial surface, the star of the show here for the Tissot is definitely the applied indices, featuring polished sides that reflect in the light, offering a bit of added flash that matches the rest of the polishing seen throughout the case. Now the handset is angular and features small tips of lume as well. While not as minimal as the Seiko, the dial text is also fairly low key, and at the 3, an outlined steel date window to match the Seiko. As far as lume, both of these watches feature Superluminova on the dial and hands, which is a big part of what makes these dressier watches with some everyday utility, and both watches shine pretty good in the darkness, though Seiko, a brand known for their lume, does, as you would imagine, have the edge here. Now so far these watches go head to head, I think, quite well. As you start getting into the movements, this is probably the #1 talking point in terms of differentiation. On the surface, 3 Hz, 21,600 vibration per hour movements, similar power reserves, but there certainly, I think, is reason to go look at the direction of the Swiss-made Powermatic 80 within here. Now, looking at the Tissot first, this watch is going to come with a silicone hairspring, which is definitely going to get some nice benefit in regards to resisting shock, as well as having some upped resistance to magnetism. And in the department of looks, I do think you have to give the slight edge to the Tissot, although neither of these are going to be great looking movements on the back side, both being open viewed from those open case backs on the back side of the watches. As mentioned, both of the movements are going to be 21,600 vibrations per hour. In the case of the Tissot, what's happening here is these are modified movements, taking an ETA 2824 base, then transitioning that to an ETA C07111, which will drop the beat rate down to 21,600 vibrations per hour from that 28,800 vibrations per hour. And what that's doing is allowing the maximum energy being stored from the mainspring to be spread out quite a bit to get this 80-hour power reserve. The Seiko is no slouch in the department of its power reserve at 70 hours, but in terms of the fit, the finish, as well as the ups spec in terms of the silicone hairspring that you're gonna have here, I think you probably have to give the nod to the Tissot. One other point though, because there's the modificationing happening with the Tissot movement, there is going to be some changing happening with the regulator pins. So non-traditional regulator pins are actually going to be on the balance itself, and they'll have to be screwed off. So to actually regulate the watch, you're going to take off the entire balance wheel. So not for the faint of heart there. And then on the Seiko, you're going to have more traditional regulator pins. In terms of accuracy, just anecdotally looking at these two side by side, the Tissot certainly won in the category of accuracy out of the box here. This one running around 4 seconds a day. And for the Seiko testing at different positions, around 7 seconds per day. Now the rating of these Seiko watches is going to be higher in regards to the deviation that is coming out of the box from the factory, but typically, I think Seiko is very conservative with their estimations, and you're probably gonna be able to get a watch that's gonna far exceed what is being spec'd from the factory itself. But in summary, two no-nonsense movements that should give you a lot of peace of mind with everyday wear. All right, so now that we've looked at many of the specifications, things to consider, let's maybe just unpack, looking at these two side by side, which one might be the best one to go for. Starting with the case finish and the wearability, I think that goes to the Seiko. It's gonna wear a bit more compact compared to that of the Tissot, which is a bit clunkier on the wrist. Still a good wear, but is a bit more boxy with its 3-link style bracelet, as well as its polish and more flat laying style that it's going to have on the wrist. It's a bit more blocky compared to the Seiko, which is gonna have a more angular profile. Also, in regards to the bracelets, I don't think either of them are that great, to be honest with you. I think the Seiko gets a small nod in the department there, as I think it's a bit more refined and will wear to the wrist a bit better. Also getting another point with micro adjustment and a case finish that might not look as flashy, and I think the Tissot actually has some pretty good finishing. It is high polished throughout on the bezel, and it definitely has a larger surface area, so that's gonna get scratched up a bit more compared to the hard coating that is going to come with the Seiko. I haven't put it through its paces to the fullest capacity, but considering there's not gonna be as many polished surfaces as well, you're probably gonna give the nod to the utility factor going to the Seiko there. In regards to the dials, I think both of them are good, but in terms of eye-catching nature and finishing nature, I think you have to give the nod to the Seiko in this aspect. It's way more eye-catching. It is a bit different, and I think the same reasons why it, of course, looks more impressive is perhaps a downside considering its versatility. The Tissot is a bit more non-threatening and will probably be able to be more versatile in a variety of different situations, but you are dealing with 21 millimeters with the straps there versus 20 millimeters, so that versatility might get negated just slightly there, given that fact. Both of these have capable water resistance of 100 meters, so both of them get the check mark there. I think they'll be able to cover many different wearing options and scenarios for people, so great point for both of them. And then for movements, again, as mentioned, and I think this is a bigger deal, but the Seiko, I think, is just slightly behind that of the Tissot, what you're getting for the movement. You're getting better accuracy out of the box, you're getting a better power reserve by 10 hours, and then in addition to that, also getting that silicone hairspring, which will have some added resistance versus shock and some defense against magnetism in the process. And then finally, the biggest point of consideration, the price, $775 versus the $1,000 for the Seiko. Not only is this a pretty significant difference in price when you're factoring in where both of these watches fall in terms of their price range being $1,000 and under, I do think there's sometimes some baggage people have with the brand Seiko in regards to, as you start going up market, what is the reasonable price to pay for the Seiko? Do I think this is a reasonable product for the money? I think it's a well-finished watch. Yes, I think the bracelet is improved compared to some of their other terrible bracelets that they've put on watches in the past. And it's just a well-finished piece on the dial, and you're getting the 6R35 movement. That said, is it 25% better than that of the Tissot? I don't know. But both of them are fantastic watches. I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to determine price as probably being the driving factor. But the Seiko on paper, I think if there was a different brand, or say you had Hamilton here and everything else was the same, would people still be saying the same thing about this Seiko watch as being too expensive? I don't know. I think both of them are very good product, but at the end of the day, Only you guys can decide what's best for you. But all right, guys, I'd love to see comments down below. Which one of these two watches would you go for if you had $1,000 to your name and you just wanted a watch that could kind of handle those everyday situations? Love to see comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Also, if you want to see more of these comparison style videos, please do give a thumbs up. That's a great indicator for me that you guys enjoy these. These definitely take a little bit more time than a traditional review, so would appreciate that. And also leave another comment about what comparisons would you want to see in the future that we do on this channel. Definitely would appreciate that. Also, if you're in the market for either of these two watches, we'll have links to where to purchase them down below. And for the Tissot, we are a full authorized dealer of Tissot, so if you are in the market for this gentleman, definitely recommend checking it out in the description. Promo code gentleman at checkout, add the strap, add the watch to your cart, and you'll be all good to go. Get that free strap up to $100 with your purchase for a limited time. If you also want to stay up to date with some content, Instagram is a great place to stay up to date for all of our content. And then we also have a second review channel where we're reviewing about 3 to 7 more watches a week. So check it out. Link in the description down below. If you don't even know that channel exists, a great place to get more watch related content directly sent to you. So definitely push on notifications there as well. But guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.